On Twitter, I'm at JF McMullen on Twitter. And when I brought JF McMullen up on Twitter, I had all these balloons go up. Is today your birthday, John?
It is my birthday.
Well,
I didn't know Twitter did that.
I've never seen that before. Literally, I just brought up JF McMullen on Twitter, as I always do, and all these balloons just went across my screen.
Yeah, pretty exciting, huh?
I'm excited. I mean, wow. Happy birthday, man.
Which everybody I've run in today says happy birthday. And this is the reason I hate social media. That's the only reason people find out.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have known either other than the balloons going across my screen. Bring up McMullen on Twitter and see what happens. Like, you get everybody in the room. Go to JF McMullen on Twitter.
I saw this earlier this morning. That
the balloons. Did you see the balloons?
Did you write congratulations, or did they just come up in general? I went to his page just now.
On Twitter.
Oh, on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm not a Facebook happy birthday clown.
Sorry,
Come on,
buddy. Oh, that's that saves me.
Which I already got yelled at by the wife today because of some people that wish me happy birthday on Facebook.
Well,
that might be of the female variety.
I wasn't connecting the dots there. The balloons did just go by on his Twitter page. They were very, very nice.
Yeah, see, that's something new.
Happy birthday, John.
Thank you.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, covering the Eagles and mandatory OTAs. And I guess let's start with Michael Bennett. He is there. And did he speak? Did he have anything interesting to say? I know everybody's been waiting to hear from Michael Bennett.
Yeah, he did. He spoke after practice. And, first thing is he explained, and I agree with him, and I put him on Twitter where you can find if you fight your way through the balloons.
A lot of balloons.
He kind of said the NFL is the only occupation where voluntary work doesn't mean voluntary, at least to some people. He's 100% right. And he said, I've told you he's done this for a long time. He's not started it here. He hasn't done voluntary work in Seattle. And he would rather spend his off season, as he describes it, to be a better husband, better father. I don't necessarily disagree with him. The Eagles have been pretty consistent saying they're not worried about it. They're not worried about him. He's actually been here a few days just stopping in for strength and conditioning, but he didn't do any of the on-field stuff in the OTAs. And when the mandatory stuff started today, he showed up as he was supposed to, and there's no problem from either side.
No, and it sounds as if they're plugging him right in as the starting defensive end. Him and Brandon Graham? I guess Brandon Graham is not participating, but is that who we anticipate will get the most reps this year?
Yeah, I think when it all shakes out, I think it's going to be Brandon at left end, Michael Bennett at right end to start. And then I think the most interesting question is who's going to rotate inside in that nickel rush package. Last year it was Brandon Graham and Chris Long would enter at left end. Derek Barnett would sort of replace Vinny Curry at right end, and you had that devastating pass rush. They have even more options now because Bennett is every bit as versatile as Brandon Graham. They still have Chris Long. They still have Derek Barnett. And he can't have them on the field all at once. So we'll see how it shakes out. But I think the more interesting part is who's going to rotate inside in that NASCAR package when they're rushing the passer. Is it going to be Brandon or is it going to be Bennett? Because they've both been really, really good at it for a really long time. So that's just another example of a position the Eagles have a lot of strength at. And, today it was interesting because before practice, Doug said, we're going to start him out with the first team. But Jim Schwartz actually started him out with the second team at left defensive end, which, is just getting him up to speed. He's starting to learn a new defense. I wouldn't, obviously Brandon's not able to practice yet, so there's more reps over there right now. But when September rolls around, you got to believe Brandon Graham and Michael Bennett are going to be the starters.
Yeah. Now, Vinny Curry had a good year last year. I wouldn't say a great year, but he had a good, solid year. But you would consider Michael Bennett a significant upgrade to what they had last year?
Yeah, significant. And I think you're right. I think that's a good word to describe Vinny's year. It was solid. He was a very good player, but he's not Michael Bennett. He's not that type of player who, at the apex of his career, was one of the top 5 defensive ends in the league. He's made the Pro Bowl 3 times. So it is just an addition to this team, and it makes him even stronger because, in theory, Michael's going to get the reps Vinny Curry had. And to be honest, he should get more than that because he's still a very good player. The biggest question to me that comes into it is Derek Barnett, because he's a very young player. He's obviously got a very high ceiling, but he's not there yet. And Michael Bennett's presence, because Brandon's going to play if he's healthy, that could take some repetitions away from Derek Barnett, and that could hurt long term. But you're kind of picking at things when you talk about that, because that's an embarrassment of riches. I mean, you got a really good player sitting down a really good prospect, so I'm not sure you can complain about it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you follow-up about Barnett because, obviously first-round pick, guy that, they liked a lot. You took him, 14 overall. You would anticipate that he would be more than just a role player, but that doesn't look like it's going to be the situation, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing.
No, it doesn't. Typically, when you have a guy, and he was pretty successful as a rookie, had a solid season, typically you would want to see that step forward in the second year. And I think if things were status quo and it was still Vinny Curry here, you probably would have saw that. But they were able to get a better player. And I'm not sure, unless you see a significant decline from what Michael Bennett was in Seattle, I'm not sure you can justify putting Derek Barnett on the field for more snaps.
John, no Sidney Jones at practice again today. Is that a red flag? Is that a concern?
No, I don't think so. I think the Eagles are just being very, very cautious. Remember, this is the time of year where if you have anything wrong with you, I mean, if you wake up with a headache, they're probably going to hold you out of practice, just out of abundance of caution. He missed the OTAs last week. He missed practice today, and he basically said in the locker room after practice he's probably not going to go this week, but he expects to be a full go at training camp. So I think that's the key. He described it as soreness, wouldn't be specific. I would assume it has something to do with the Achilles, but I don't know that for sure. But the fact that he's on the field and watching practice and not rehabbing inside indicates it's not all that serious.
And I'll stay on the defensive side of the ball and ask about Trey Sullivan and the guy you've been talking about a lot, Devontae Bosby. I know Doug was asked about them today.
Yeah, I mean, a part of it is the fact that Sidney has not been able to practice recently. But Corey Unlin yesterday, when the assistant coaches were speaking, he mentioned Bosby again. It's been a theme throughout the spring. He's made so many plays. And Unlin said he was way ahead of everybody else as far as making plays. So he continued to take those first-team reps at the nickelback slot. And we'll see how things shake out when training camp starts. But he's in the conversation now. And I don't know too many people who thought that would be the case. And it's pretty clear he's the leader in the clubhouse as we go through this mini camp and then head towards training camp. And that might be the biggest surprise for this entire team. As far as Trey Sullivan, he's sort of in the leading guy to take over the Corey Graham role. And I talked about it a lot. That's a very, very important role on this team because Corey Graham was the guy that made Jim Schwartz comfortable enough to move Malcolm Jenkins all around the field. And I'm not sure if he's going to have that comfort in Trey Sullivan. In fact, I would bet he's not, just because I know Jim, and I mean, he's got to be. And I've said it a lot. It's not about making plays. It's not like Corey Graham made a ton of plays when he was in the game, although he did make some. It has more to do with being assignment sound and the fact that he's a veteran. He's been through it all. He's never lined up incorrectly, things like that. And by and large, that kind of defines young players. And I'm not picking on Trey Sullivan. Every young player tends to make mistakes. So I think if you want to look at one of the issues for the Eagles, that third safety position remains high on the list.
Well, we'll go from young to old. Darren Sproles back in the nest, and Darren Sproles obviously coming off injuries. A lot of questions about Darren Sproles today. How did he look? Is he raring to go? And what did Doug Peterson have to say about having Darren Sproles back?
Well, I always say I don't know if there's a player on this team that Doug trusts more than Darren Sproles. He loves him. He's been advocating for him to come back since early in the process. And the Eagles finally did make it happen. So the question is, how much is he going to play? Where is he going to play? I think people kind of forget because Darren got hurt early last season in week 3. If you look at Doug's first season here, he kind of defaulted to Darren Sproles in key situations. And early last season, in those first 2 games, same story, kind of defaulted to Darren Sproles. And I think you're going to see the same thing this year. And it's really not a shot at Jay Ajayi or Corey Clement. It's just Darren knows what he's doing. And he's a great pass protector. He's a great receiver. So you know he's going to be impactful on third downs. You know he's going to be impactful on punt returns. I asked Doug about kickoff returns because of the rule changes.
Right.
He could be involved in the kickoff return game, although the staff hasn't talked about that yet. So he's going to have a significant role. And he said today, and if you watch him, he said he could go today, but the Eagles are being really cautious with him, and obviously he's not going to do anything more than individual work here in minicamp.
Yeah, Johnny Mac's with us here at JF McMullen. And, one thing that's interesting is the receivers. Marcus Wheaton, you wrote a little bit about him in your minicamp notes. Him, Shelton Gibson, we talked about the other day. But Wheaton's an interesting guy, a veteran guy who has some talent.
Yeah, he really does. He's been injured, really, the last 2 years and hasn't played much at all. But if you go back to when he was in Pittsburgh, he was really an ascending player, a good, solid receiver, and he's a heck of a route runner. I was watching him today, and you can make a strong argument that he's the best route runner on this team already. That's how good he is at that. And he was just torturing the second and third team defensive backs. The question with him is health, number one. And if he's healthy, where are you going to play him? Because you have Alshon Jeffrey, you have Nelson Aguilar, you have Mike Wallace, and you have Matt Collins. Those 4 are kind of locked in as long as they're healthy to make this roster. And then when you start talking about the 5th receiver, you kind of have to contribute on special teams if you're going to be that 5th receiver. So it's kind of how you weigh it. To me, there's no question Marcus Wheaton is better than any other receiver the Eagles would have battling for that role, but he doesn't do much on special teams. So you sort of have to weigh what you want, if you want the really good receiver or if you want a guy who can help you on special teams.
John, yesterday when the assistant coaches talked, we didn't get a chance to get into the Press Taylor conversation about the role that he had in the Philly special. Everybody remembers Nick Foles. Everybody remembers and have seen that NFL Films audio of like, yeah, let's do it. What role did Press Taylor have in the whole thing? Because he may have been the genesis of it all.
Yeah, he found the play and put it in the Eagles playbook. And it was from a meaningless Week 17 game in the 2016 season when Chicago ran it against Minnesota, and Frank Reich had asked him. He was a quality control coach along with assisting John DeFilippo with the quarterbacks. And he asked him to put together his 5 favorite trick plays, and this is one he culled from that game. Also said he saw it a number of times in the college ranks on film, but it's a little bit different in college because they have looser formation rules. So they took the exact play Chicago ran and put it into their playbook. Press was the one who found it, and really they were just waiting to use it in the proper circumstance. And I don't think anybody thought it was going to be on 4th and 1 in the Super Bowl. But Doug ran it, and Nick wanted to run it, and Doug approved it. And obviously the rest is history. But, yeah, Press Taylor's the one who found the play.
Hey, last night Doug Peterson said, quote, "We are no longer the underdog. The mask come off. Now we have a target on our back." So do the Eagles and the fans, should they view them still as that underdog, which they embrace so much, or does it have a different feel around NovaCare Center? Like maybe they have a little bit more swagger and feel like the favorite?
Yeah, I mean, I've always argued with that narrative to begin with. I think, and I talked about it on the show, like nobody thought the Eagles were underdogs last year until Carson got injured. And I always said if Carson was healthy, the Eagles are significant favorites in the divisional round, the NFC Championship game, and probably not in the Super Bowl, but that's because of the Patriots' reputation. So they were not really underdogs last year, and sort of that whole mentality came out of nobody believing in Nick Foles. So from Nick's standpoint, it was certainly true. From everybody else's standpoint, it really wasn't. But they latched onto it and they used it. But Doug's completely right now. I mean, they're the world champions. You can't say you're the underdogs. You're the Super Bowl champions. You're the one everybody's gunning for. And now, as he described it, you have the target on your back.
Right.
And
you can't wear the underdog mask anymore.
No.
They're out.
They
That was a one-time, one playoff season deal, and now you got burned on that purchase.
Yeah, yes, you did. If you want to use it again, there aren't going to be many games this year, especially if Carson's healthy and starts playing well early. There aren't going to be many games this year where the Eagles aren't going to be favorites and significant favorites. So, yeah, it's going to be tough to sell that narrative again.
I know Ryan has a underdog T-shirt. Do you feel that T-shirt is now no longer? Can you wear that T-shirt still?
Absolutely. The head coach said it. The head coach admitted it.
Head coach said that T-shirt's done.
No, that signifies the Super Bowl team.
It's nostalgia.
If you give Jason Kelsey a couple Bud Lights, he'll find a way.
All right, he's John McMullen. There's a lot of NFL stories, too. We'll probably have to dive into tomorrow because there is a lot going on around the league with some big name. Andrew Luck threw a high school football today. They have smaller size football. That's big news.
He threw any kind of football. Nerf, high school, it doesn't matter. He threw something.
Yes. Well, he throws the remote off.
The Colts are thrilled. That guy has not thrown a football in 17 months. Actually, he did throw for 2 weeks, I think, in October of last year. Other than that, since he had his surgery for a torn labrum, and it's been 17 months, he hasn't thrown a football. So that's a big, big development for the Colts, obviously.
John McMullen, the Go-Guest appear to be the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. You can read more from him on the NFL at GetMoreSports.com, and his Eagles coverage is at 97.3 ESPN.com. Thank you, John. Happy birthday.
Thank you, guys.